And we are live. There we go.
Excellent.
We're on the internet. Welcome everybody to this Project Access Oxbridge webinar. We're going to be talking about the different issues about not so much getting in, that will come in a later webinar. We might have already covered it actually, but particularly life in Oxford and Cambridge, what to do when you get here, what college life is like, and all of the issues surrounding that. So I will just start by introducing myself. My name's Ollie. I do PPE. I'm in my second year at Magdalen College in Oxford.
Sure. I'm Tess. I'm a second year studying Ancient and Modern History at Royal College, Oxford.
Yeah. Anthony, you go.
Hi, I'm Antonia. I'm a first year student in Pembroke College, Cambridge, and I do natural sciences.
Well, hello, my name is Alex. I just finished my PhD in chemistry and I was with Darwin College in Cambridge.
Awesome. So this is everyone. We've got a kind of a nice range of people from first year all the way to the end of PhD, which is kind of the whole student life cycle. So hopefully we'll get lots of different perspectives. So we'll start with a question from Claire from Australia, who asks about monthly and weekly budgets. This is a question that comes up an awful lot. Monthly and weekly budgets in Oxford and Cambridge. My experience has generally been you need to pay your battels, which is your rent, or it might be called other things in other places, but it's your rent to your college. Sometimes that includes food, but otherwise, but usually doesn't. For me, that's about £1,200 or £1,300 per term. So that's about £3,900 a year, £4,000 a year. And then I tend to spend about £10 a day otherwise, so that's an extra £70 a week. Terms are 8 weeks, which gives you £560. So I would guess about £2,000 a term, but it depends on person to person. Do other people have differing views on that?
Yeah, I would say that the thing is that when you're looking at accommodation, you might notice on university websites is that they're massive sums, and it might seem a lot cheaper in Oxford. But most universities that you keep your room for the entire year, but Oxford you have to move out at each term, so you're renting for the time you're there. So it does work out a lot cheaper in the long run. But it's not like you're getting it for the 52 weeks as you are in a lot of other, or 48 weeks I think it is, or 40, something like that, in a lot of other places. And yeah, my battles include food and stuff as well.
Sure, that's an important point to note, because in my college in Oxford, we never live out of college, so we never have to deal with private landlords. But in other colleges, very often in your second year or in your third year, it depends college to college, you do have to live out, which is often more expensive. And as Tess said, very often that means that you have to be tied into a longer term lease rather than just your time in the college, which keeps costs down.
But I think a lot also depends on sort of what stage of your degree you are, because I did my undergrad and master's in Utrecht and Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where we don't have the collegiate system. And I've only done my PhD here in Cambridge. And as a PhD student, you're expected to be there all year round. So yeah, I don't know if our rooms are cheaper than for undergrads. I mean, I was with Darwin College. I don't know how much that differs from the rest, but I think my initial room was about £95 per week, and it wasn't a very good room. And I think it sort of varies between sort of 90 and 130 a week. And then if you live in private accommodation, it's usually between 400 and 650 a month, with private landlords for a room and a house share. So it's actually quite expensive. I was really surprised that a city as small as Cambridge was so expensive.
I think that is something worth noting, but actually very often as an undergrad, because you're subsidised by the college, it ends up being slightly nicer than if you're a resident in private accommodation. You get very little for quite a lot of money. The next question is what international students do during the holidays if they can't fly back home to their home countries. I have
work in the lab. Work in the lab.
Yeah, that's the PhD student's approach. Antonia?
Yeah, so I for example, I'm going to stay in college all summer and work here. You can also always ask the college to provide accommodation for the summer, and usually it's just granted, or any other holidays you have. You can just stay in your room. Although sometimes the rooms are used for other college functions, they organize different summer schools. So then you have to move out, but stay in Cambridge or Oxford or wherever.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Very often you'll find people going to college accommodation for the vax, and that's usually easily accommodated. It obviously costs a little bit more money, but there are opportunities to work in college, there are opportunities to work elsewhere in Oxford and Cambridge, so it's always very doable. The next question is a big one on the minds of most students in this university. How do you balance work and recreational aspects of university life?
Yeah, if I had known. I don't. After 11 years in higher education, I still don't know how to do that.
Antonia, do you have any thoughts as a first year who's grappling with this problem now?
I think it's like important to realize that uni is so much more than just work, and like as long as you keep your deadlines and work a couple of hours a day, then you can still have fun, you can enjoy all the extracurriculars, and you'll be fine.
I think that's a really important point. Actually, if you notice, people that do blues sports, university level sports, for example, are often the most efficient people because they're just forced to cram in their work into a very short time frame. And often, the more you do, the more you're made to work in the little time that you have. So actually, you can make yourself more efficient. And Oxford and Cambridge are very, very good at doing that.
I think if I can just comment on that, I think that there would also be a difference between if you are still like in your undergrad doing courses, or if you're working in a lab where the amount of work that you have to do is not sort of defined. Because if you are doing like a research project, you can always do more work, like your work is never finished. And I think those two are quite different situations. So I would say that like as an undergrad, as long as you hand in your papers in time and you prepare for your exams, then you're fine. And some people need more time for that than others. I mean, I spent quite a lot of my time, probably like 35 to 55 hours a week during my undergrad, whereas other students could get away with less time. But then if you do like a research project where you basically determine the pace of the project, you have to figure out sort of how ambitious you are and what you want to do afterwards, and if it's worth it to work like 60 hours a week, or if you're okay with working 40 and maybe getting like less done. But there's so many variations because there's good and bad projects, sort of labs that are better or less well suited for what you want to do, and supervision is all like your supervision in the lab is also very kind of variable. But I would say, at least for me, like as a PhD student, I would have to like plan my extracurricular things, because if I wouldn't plan anything, I would just work in the weekend or do at least some work in the weekend, because I'd be like, oh, well, I have nothing else planned anyway. I'll just go into the lab and do this. And I think that doesn't really work well. So I would recommend people to plan fun stuff so they don't get sort of the inkling to go into the lab because they've got nothing else to do.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Setting aside time is really, really important.
Yeah.
Making sure that you do important stuff that isn't work is really, really important. A related question from Alice is the workload question mark, which I guess, again, is a question of undergrad versus postgrad. But at the undergrad level, I guess, for most humanities subjects across Oxford and Cambridge, you typically do 1 or 2 essays a week, which means typically a 2 to 2,500 word essay for each topic that you're doing. And that essay typically requires reading 400 or 500 pages of stuff a week. And you can do that to a greater or lesser extent, depending on how good you are at shortcutting and how good you are at cutting corners. But that's the general workload, and it's pretty invariant across the degree. Antonia, what's it like for a science undergrad?
Like for sciences, it's slightly different because we do spend a lot of time in labs. So I normally tend to have 12 hours of lectures per week, and then another 12 of labs, and then 4 hours of supervision. I have to normally hand in 2 short biology essays and do some examples for like maths and physics. Work maybe 3 or 4 hours per subject, so like 12 hours per week in work. But it really depends on people. I feel like in general, sciences, you have more contact hours, and because of that, like the course is more structured, that then you don't have to do as much reading.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fair. And then obviously once you get to the PhD level, you do what you like, right? You can do as much or as little work as you want, depending on how quickly you want to get it done and what you're working on or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, what can I say?
Yeah. So a question from Audrey from Indonesia is, how much would you suggest us to prepare for university over the summer? And I guess that
Nothing.
Yeah. That's one response. I guess it depends on the educational system you've come from, your level of English, because it's really important that you hit the ground running with that. But in terms of preparing for your course, I would say you will have more freedom that summer than you probably will ever again until you retire. So just make the most of it.
I think it depends on your like situation at home. Like if you're concerned, depends what you're concerned about when you come and get. If you're concerned about the workload, then honestly, everyone gets at the workload over summer, and very few people like probably do it. But like, don't quote me on that. But also, like, if you're concerned about like anxiety and things when you're here, then definitely prepare in that regard. Like, you want to enjoy your time here, and you don't want to be like weighed down by like, you know, like, you want to be as comfortable as you possibly can be. So prepare in that regard. Yeah, like look into like support structures and things like that. It's always a really good thing to do.
Yeah, I don't think I prepared at all before I started my undergrad. Of course, that was in the Netherlands, where the system is slightly different, and I did my high school there, so there was a sort of seamless transition. But I think, yeah, in terms of sort of your life in a new city, because for most people, the university where they go to, that will be like in a new city, is to maybe spend some time getting to know your way around, like where are the supermarkets you like to go to, where can you go to gigs, you know, bookshops, sports teams, just so you have a sort of an idea of where you can find the things that you need before you start your course, so that, you know, when you're very busy with your coursework, that you are comfortable, you can find everything else you need.
Sure. The next question is from Sophia from Ireland, who asks, how international is the atmosphere? And again, I think that question depends an awful lot on whether you're talking undergrad or postgrad. I think across Oxford and Cambridge at the undergrad level, 75–80% of students are from the UK. So you do get a nice mix of international students from lots of different countries, but they are 20% of the population. It is predominantly UK-based students. I think at the graduate level that's higher, but I'm not hugely aware of the graduate system. Do you have any comments on that?
So I did my PhD in the chemistry department, and I would say like the three sort of research, because we work in like a massive research group, and there were very few British people around. It was a really small minority. So we were mostly people from Europe, but also people from, we had some people from South Korea and Japan, quite a number of people from China, South America, United States, Australia. So it's very, very, very international. But what I found is that although people come from different countries, that they're very similar in many respects, because everyone's worked really hard to get, you know, to their position. Everyone's interested in whatever the, you know, particular field is you're studying. So it's very sort of multi-ethnic, but people are quite similar in many, many respects, I found.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And certainly a function of the fact that, you know, the research level, it's a very, very international place. But I think you're right in that the undergrad kind of feeds directly out of the school system in a given country, and so you expect the undergrad to be more homogenous. Yeah. So the next question is from Rebecca from the UK, who asks how to get the most out of bursary and scholarship opportunities. So you've applied to Cambridge and presumably got into Cambridge. I don't know about the undergrad scholarship opportunities specifically for Cambridge, but I know that both Oxford and Cambridge have very generous, centrally university-funded bursaries for UK students and EU students. So, for example, in Oxford, you get, in addition to your government maintenance grant, which I believe has unfortunately been scrapped, so you now get a loan, but you do get a bursary, a non. It's not a loan. It's given to you. There's no strings attached, from Oxford or Cambridge. That is, I believe, in Oxford's case, it's about £3,500 a year. In Cambridge's case, I believe it's similar. So that you really have to do nothing about. If you're an international student, there are lots of different bursary and funding opportunities specific to your country. Most of these will be listed on the fees and funding websites for Oxford and Cambridge, but do get in touch with national funding agencies if you have any further concerns.
Yeah. So
sorry.
Okay, so about the office system. Oh, sorry, just getting me. Go ahead.
For like Cambridge system, we do have like a Cambridge bursary for UK and EU students, which is like £3,500 per year. But then on top of that, there are loads of different grants that you can get from colleges. Some colleges do offer more bursaries, sort of in terms of like giving. You pay less rent. So, for example, I get another 1,000 from my college, and this varies amongst colleges. But you also tend to have, for example, travel grants, so that if you have like an opportunity to work in a lab or like somewhere over summer, but it's not paid, then you can apply for a bursary to cover your cost of life. There are also like book grants, for example, or sometimes even like sport grants, those kind of things. So if you research that, that can be really helpful.
Sure.
Yeah. I think with sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that if you're applying to Oxford Cambridge, when you do Student Finance England, if you're like, I think first in the UK, isn't she? Tick a little box saying economics of bursaries, and then the university just gets in touch with you if you've got one. You don't really have to fill anything in for the bursaries. That's useful. And something else, like, on the college like travel grants and things. So we get them here as well. And they're really like we're only very willing to give them out. But you can also get things like the hardship grant. But we have that here in Oriel, which is when if you've like fallen upon circumstances, outside of your like something that's completely unexpected has happened to you, and you've like lost quite a lot of your like, income from it. You can apply for a hardship grant, and you'll get quite a lot of money off your like battles or just towards your like cost of living. And you can also get vacation residence forms. So if you have to stay for like later things like exams, which you can't really not stay for, you can claim all that money back off college, and you won't have to pay like a stupid amount for that.
Awesome. There's a question that's both from Farah in the UK and Lee Kwan from Hong Kong, which is, how do you get the most out of Freshers Week without drinking and going along with the typical Freshers Week activities? I guess I drank during Freshers Week, but I know lots of people that had a great time otherwise. Can you guys talk a little bit about what your college puts on for those people that aren't drinkers?
So I'd say most of the activities during the day are non-drinking anyway, and you get like, for example, Freshers Fair with like loads of societies just like showing that they exist and like what they do, so you can also like sign up to that. And loads of them do like trial runs, for example, I don't know, like dancing, all the sports, do like a free session and just meet some people there, see how it is. The evenings we, for example, had some like board game night, which organizes something like some kind of event for as well. So,
but I think that
sure we'll make friends.
I think that there's a difference between people who don't want to drink themselves and people who don't want to go to places where other people drink, because if because of like religious or cultural reasons you wouldn't want to go to a place where other people would be drinking alcohol, then I think you will have a really difficult time. Like I encountered this myself when I was at in the committee of one of the societies here, where one of our committee members, I think, was not willing to go to an event where other people were drinking because of their religious views. And I think then you will have a very difficult time, because people will enjoy some alcohol to different sort of levels at social events. If it's like a glass of wine for dinner, or all the way to like getting shit-faced at a club and everything in between. So I think if people have a problem with other people consuming alcohol around them, then I think they will have a very difficult time with social life, well, in any Western European country. But I don't drink myself, and I have never had any problems going to social events where other people drink, because I'm fine with other people drinking. I just don't really drink myself, and I've always had really good company and met wonderful people and have had a really good time despite me not drinking. So you can have a great time even if you don't yourself drink. But if you don't want to be around other people that drink, then I don't see the point of going to any social event really, because it's just a thing what other people do. And if you have a problem with that, you will have to find your own sort of social circle with people with similar views on that. But I think people would be really struggling in that circumstance.
I know. I wouldn't get that far, just because a lot of the events. So I helped from Freshers Week this year for Oriel, and all of our events in the day were completely. There was no alcohol served. There wasn't even anything present. And to be honest, they're actually the events when it's best to get to know people. That's the events when you actually talk to people. Because when you're just like in some kind of like horrible grotty club and they're like, a place, you know, like you're just not chatting to anyone. And so that was something that like. So we did like sports days, we did smoothie making, we did ice skating, we did lots of things like that. We also did tea and toast from 10 to 12. From 12 till 2 every night that people could come to if they didn't want to like. So it was 8 people, so they'd get back safely and didn't just like go wandering around the streets of Oxford. But also like when it was a bit early, like people just kind of came and brought stuff to do. So yeah, and also a lot of societies actually put on like their own kind of alternative Freshers Weeks. So you go like, there are lots of events going on all throughout the university. It's not all just like college based. So things like stress.
Yeah, that basically, I think Freshers Week is an interesting time. You get to meet lots of new people. There is, to be totally frank, there is pressure to go out in the evening and drink, because the young people, that's what they like to do. But you can very much find groups of people that don't want to do that, and I think everyone's very friendly and open-minded about it broadly. But we live in a culture where most people drink at least a little bit to relax, and therefore people's behavior is conditioned by that. Okay, next question is from Anna, who says, it's not phrased as a question, but I'll make it into one. Anna from the UK says, making friends, getting settled in, and dealing with homesickness / imposter syndrome. So I guess that this is all, when I get there, how am I going to feel and how am I going to deal with the pressures of being in this place? I guess when I got here, I felt all of those things. It's quite daunting. But I think what's lovely about the collegiate system is you are expected to, within quite a short time, know your whole year group. And it almost feels like a new family, as it were. And so actually, because you're in an environment that's small and quite homely, even my college, Magdalen, which is one of the bigger colleges in Oxford and Cambridge, it still feels relatively homely in terms of, most people know most people. And so actually, it's a really nice environment, I think, to transfer, kind of the best environment that you could possibly have to transfer from a kind of sheltered life at home to the big wide world.
Yeah, I think what's also really good is that we have college families. So when you arrive, you will have like your college parents, and they spend some time with you during the Freshers Week with one of your college siblings, which is just like someone else who's going to study in your college. So there's like someone you can talk to in the first few days. And in general, I think like people do tend to make friends with people on their staircases, especially, and with other people in college, and then on your subject, because you sit in the same lectures and do the same labs and everything. So you will end up talking to people.
I think as a PhD student it's different, because you're not taking any courses anymore, but then you'll have other like MPhil and PhD students in the lab where you work, and you'll have shared sort of safety induction courses. So that's how I met people. And yeah, I didn't do a lot of things with my college because I just wasn't as interested. So people do meet others at college, but I think it's less the case compared to undergrads. But yeah, there's plenty of things to do. And yeah, like I said, the people in your research group generally become, well, not all of them, but some of them will become good friends. At least that's my experience.
Awesome. A question that comes up a lot is, when should I apply for X? That means, when should I apply for student finance? When should I apply for a college accommodation, and so on and so forth? Student finance, I would advise doing it as soon as possible. It opens every year in about February, March time. So you could apply for September now, or October now. So I would advise you to do it as soon as possible. But basically, it's very nice to know that the payments are scheduled and you're going to get what you're expecting to get. It's a big relief. So apply as soon as possible. In terms of, as Tess said, Oxford and Cambridge bursaries, which are available to all UK and EU students, that's done automatically. So when you tick the box on student finance, as she said, there's give my information to my university or college. That information will then be used by the university to calculate what you're entitled to. So that's very, very easy. So as long as that's all, once that's all sent off, you really breathe a sigh of relief because it will be done. In terms of accommodation, certainly in my college. Sorry, go on. Sorry,
That's
go
a
on.
bit different for EU students because we don't have a maintenance grant. We're not means tested when we apply. So after results, they usually mid-August, you will get some mails from student finance with like special forms to fill in, and then you send them by post, and they will notify you around September about the bursary.
Awesome.
Yeah. Definitely do everything with student finance as you possibly can, because there's always a lot of faff with student finance. I once came home with 5 different letters from student finance with 5 different things of information on.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of accommodation, certainly in my college, when we arrived, it was all sorted, right? You were expected to pay your rent for the month, but the room that you had was already allocated to you, and everything was done in advance. I don't think that's the case at other colleges. I think you have to choose a room or, go through the motions in advance. But I'm sure your college will be in touch with you regarding that, because as far as I'm aware, almost all colleges in Oxford and Cambridge provide accommodation to first years.
No, that's not a guarantee. Like as a foreign student with Darwin, there was no guarantee for a room, and I was really surprised. Eventually, I did get a room. So, but you had no say in what kind of room you got, what sort of house. But at least they did provide. But at least they didn't make a guarantee, not even for first year foreign students. First year, on my course as a PhD student.
Yeah. No, so I was talking undergrad. I guess
yeah.
It's probably quite different.
Mm.
We just fill out you get sent a online form thing that you kind of have to list your preference of rooms, like what grade you want, because our rooms are all graded and they're priced accordingly. And then then that's like it. You kind of like find out for the day and find out how lucky you got with your room. Yeah.
In other words, if you're an undergrad, don't worry about it. If you're a PhD student, you probably think harder about it.
Yeah.
Okay, if we go for just a couple more questions. A really interesting one that I've got from Casey Holland from the UK is, how hard will it be coming from a state school to fit in Christchurch? For those that don't know, Christchurch is an old and quite prestigious college in Oxford that has historically had connotations with kind of the old aristocracy and the old elite. Lots of prime ministers and things went there, and it's generally perceived to be quite intimidating. In Cambridge, you've got Trinity that has a similar reputation, and I think going to somebody who goes to a college that kind of has that kind of perception, I think, as in every place, there will be people that are posh, and if you're not from that background, you probably find them a bit weird. But I don't think that it's particularly harmful, and I haven't myself come across any kind of behaviours that people often worry about, classes comments and things like that. But I don't know if anyone else has come up against things like this. Tests particularly worth asking about this.
Yeah. I personally haven't really. The thing that I've always found is that I was really, really apprehensive before I came about this exact problem. I remember really dreading it, but you kind of get here and you realise that like everyone's in the same boat, because like no one really knows anyone in their college, and if you do know someone, that's like incredibly rare, and everyone's just really willing to like meet people and make friends. So I never really had any kind of issue with it. And we have quite like Oriel as another college that's got quite like a reputation for being quite, well, it's called Toriel, so like but like that, it really doesn't really, I've never had a problem with that at all. And if you do, there's actually quite a lot of support for it in Oxford. So there's a housing campaign called Class Act. There's like a lot of kind of like access. There's every college has an access rep, every college has welfare reps. So like there's always some to talk to. And if you do experience that problem, then the person who is being weird to you is probably in the minority. Like that isn't really in Oxford anymore. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and you'll often find that if somebody is being like that, everyone else will make them know that that's not okay anymore. Or at least it never has been okay, but maybe it was tolerated in the past. It certainly isn't today. Okay, last question. What should I remember before coming to the UK? I guess that's an international problem, because I never had to set myself up a bank account or register with the NHS, because all of that was done. Do the foreigners among us have any comments?
I'd say like loads of patience, like especially at the beginning. Things are different, like I don't know, having double taps and having to like turn on the plugs and stuff like this. It takes a bit of time to get used to. Yeah, but in general, it's just like after a couple of weeks living here, you will get used to things being slightly different than at home.
Sure.
I think when we started, we got like a welcome pack from the department, and I think there must have been information in there or through the college where like about setting up a bank account and going to a GP to be registered, and they would usually be able to also tell you like a dentist, that you could go to if you have to. And I don't think it was that much of a hassle, but I think it really depends sort of what you're used to, because the Netherlands and the UK are not that different. I think if you come from sort of other parts of the world, you might have a harder time getting sort of settled in and finding your way around. But the good thing about Cambridge is that you can cycle everywhere, although there are a lot of potholes. And motorists who pretend you're not there. But like with regards to public transport, like I hardly ever go with the bus. I just cycle everywhere, so that's actually quite convenient. Yeah.
And I'd say also Cambridge and Oxford both organize International Freshers Week, which is like a couple of days just before normal Freshers Week. And it might be a good idea to just come a bit earlier and have this, this time getting used to living in another country before you actually are, put into this, hectic Freshers Week with all the new people and so many things happening.
So I'd point out on that is definitely on a college by college basis, because that came up at a meeting the end of the week in college. Like, so the university runs one, but not like sometimes you have to go and find it on your own. Sometimes, so you always arrive earlier. Sometimes the college itself might not be fully like prepped yet. There is still always something on the university.
Okay.
So, like, it's not just like you can go. If you're at your college, there might not be something on, but there is something elsewhere.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I think we've covered an awful lot of stuff. Effectively, in a few sentences, if you're an undergrad, you don't really have to worry about anything. Come along, everyone's friendly, everyone's happy. You'll have a lovely time. Accommodation will be sorted, and everything's, the colleges and the universities do their best to make it as easy as possible to transition from home life to life at university. It's a very pleasant process. It's a very pleasant place to study. For those of you who have got in, really well done for having done so. I look forward to meeting you, hopefully, next year. You'll have a great time. It's a really nice place to come to university, especially when you consider the resources and the environment that we're in. So don't have any concerns. Everything is nice and easy. But hopefully we've enlightened those little areas that people might have niggling concerns about. In terms of postgrads, well, don't be a postgrad.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Wait.